paper. Carlton spoke of it, too, but others can do it as well. I want you to do something that is so thoroughly you that no one else can do it. It's a hard life, Ruth, you know that as well as I do, and I love you." His last argument was convincing. "I won't do anything you don't want me to do, dear," she said, with a new humility. "I want you to be happy, dearest," he answered quickly. "Just try my way for a year that's all I ask. I know your independence is sweet to you, but the privilege of working for you with hand and brain, with your love in my heart, with you at home, to be proud of me when I succeed, and to give me new courage when I fail why, it's the sweetest thing I've ever known." "I'll have to go back to town very soon, though," she said, a little later. "I am interrupting the honeymoon." "We'll have to have one of our very own soon, that you can't interrupt, and when you go back, I'm going with you. We'll buy things for the house." "We need lots of things, don't we?" she asked. "I expect we do, darling, but I haven't the least idea what they are. You'll have to tell me." "Oriental rugs, for one thing," she said, "and a mahogany piano, and an instrument to play it with, because I haven't any parlour tricks, and some good pictures, and a waffle iron, and a porcelain rolling pin." "What do you know about rolling pins and waffle irons?" he asked fondly. "My dear boy," she replied patronisingly, "you forget that in the days when I was a free and independent woman, I was on a newspaper. I know lots of things that are utterly strange to you, because, in all probability, you never ran a woman's department. If you want soup, you must boil meat slowly, and if you want meat, you must boil it rapidly, and if dough sticks to a broom straw when you jab it into a cake, it isn't done." He laughed joyously. "How about the porcelain rolling pin?" "It's germ proof," she rejoined soberly. "Are we going to keep the house on the antiseptic plan?" "We are. It's better than the instalment plan, isn't it?" "Oh, Carl!" she exclaimed, "I've had the brightest idea." "Spring it," he demanded. "Why, Aunt Jane's attic is full of old furniture, and I believe she'll give it to us." His face fell. "How charming," he said, without emotion. "Oh, you stupid," she laughed. "It's colonial mahogany, every stick of it. It only needs to be done over. Ruth, you're a genius. Wait till I get it before you praise me. Just stay here a minute and I'll run up to see what frame of mind she's in." When she entered the kitchen, the bride was busily engaged in getting supper. Uncle James, with a blue gingham apron tied under his arms, was awkwardly peeling potatoes. "Oh, how good that smells!" exclaimed Ruth, as a spicy sheet of gingerbread was taken out of the oven. Aunt Jane looked at her kindly, with gratified pride beaming from every feature. "I wish you'd teach me to cook, Aunty," she continued, following up her advantage. "You know I'm going to marry Mr. Winfield." "Why, yes, I'll teach you. Where is he?" "He's outside. I just came in to speak to you a minute." "You can ask him to supper if you want to." "Thank you, Aunty, that's lovely of you. I know he'll like to stay." "James," said Mrs. Ball, "you're peelin' them pertaters with thick peelin's, and you'll land in the poorhouse. I've never knowed it to fail." "I wanted to ask you something, Aunty," Ruth went on quickly, though feeling that the moment was not auspicious. "You know all that old furniture up in the attic? Well, what of it? Why, you aren't using it, you know, and I thought perhaps you'd be willing to give it to us, so that we can go to housekeeping as soon as we're married." "It was your grandmother's," Aunt Jane replied, after long thought, "and, as you say, I ain't usin' it. I don't know but what you might as well have it as anybody else. I lay out to buy me a new haircloth parlour suit with that $200 of James's. He give the minister the whole $4 over and above that, and yes, you can have it," she concluded. Ruth kissed her, with real feeling. "Thank you so much, Aunty. It will be lovely to have something that was my grandmother's." When she went back to Winfield, he was absorbed in a calculation he was making on the back of an envelope. "You are not to use your eyes," she said warningly, "and oh, Carl, it was my grandmother's, and she's given us every bit of it, and you're to stay to supper." "Must be in a fine humour," he observed. "I'm ever so glad. Come here, darling, you don't know how I've missed you." "I've been earning furniture," she said, settling down beside him. "People earn what they get from Aunty. I won't say that, though, because it's mean. Tell me about this remarkable furniture. What is it, and how much of it is destined to glorify our humble cottage?" "It's all ours," she returned serenely, "but I don't know just how much there is. I didn't look at it closely, you know, because I never expected to have any of it. Let's see, there's a heavy dresser, and a large, round table with claw feet that's our dining table and there's a bed, just like those in the windows in town, when it's done over, and there's a big old fashioned sofa, and a spinning wheel " "Are you going to spin? Hush, don't interrupt. There are 5 chairs, dining room chairs and 2 small tables, and a card table with a leaf that you can stand up against the wall, and 2 lovely rockers, and I don't know what else." "That's a fairly complete inventory, considering that you didn't look at it closely. What a little humbug you are!" "You like humbugs, don't you?" "Some, not all." There was a long silence, and then Ruth moved away from him. "Tell me everything," she said. "Think of all the years I haven't known you." "There's nothing to tell, dear. Are you going to conduct an excavation into my past?" "Indeed I'm not. The present is enough for me, and I'll attend to your future myself." "There's not much to be ashamed of, Ruth," he said soberly. "I've always had the woman I should marry in my mind the not impossible she and my ideal has kept me out of many a pitfall. I wanted to go to her with clean hands and a clean heart, and I have. I'm not a saint, but I'm as clean as I could be and live in the world at all." Ruth put her hand on his. "Tell me about your mother." A shadow crossed his face and he waited a moment before speaking. "My mother died when I was born," he said with an effort. "I can't tell you about her, Ruth. She wasn't a very good woman." "Forgive me, dear," she answered, with quick sympathy. "I don't want to know." "I didn't know about it until a few years ago," he continued, "when some kindly disposed relatives of father's gave me full particulars. They're dead now, and I'm glad of it. She drank." "Don't, Carl," she cried. "I don't want to know." "You're a sweet girl, Ruth," he said tenderly, touching her hand to his lips. "Father died when I was 10 or 12 years old, and I can't remember him very well, though I have one picture, taken a little while before he was married. He was a moody, silent man, who hardly ever spoke to anyone. I know now that he was broken hearted. I can't remember even the tones of his voice, but only 1 or 2 little peculiarities. He couldn't bear the smell of lavender, and the sight of any shade of purple actually made him suffer. It was very strange. "I've picked up what education I have," he went on. "I have nothing to give you, Ruth, but these," he held out his hands, "and my heart. That's all I want, dearest. Don't tell me any more." A bell rang cheerily, and when they went in, Aunt Jane welcomed him with apparent cordiality, though a close observer might have detected a tinge of suspicion. She liked the ring on Ruth's finger, which she noticed for the first time. "It's real pretty, ain't it, James?" she asked. "Yes'm, 'tis so." "It's just come to my mind now that you never give me no ring except this here one we was married with. I guess we'd better take some of that $200 you've got sewed up in that unchristian belt you insist on wearin', and get me a ring like Ruth's, and use the rest for furniture. Don't you think so?" "Yes'm," he replied. "Ring and furniture, or anythin' you'd like." "James is real indulgent," she said to Winfield, with a certain modest pride, which was at once ludicrous and pathetic. "He should be, Mrs. Ball," returned the young man, gallantly. She looked at him closely, as if to discover whether he was in earnest, but he did not flinch. "Young feller," she said, "you ain't layin' out to take no excursions on the water, be you?" "Not that I know of," he answered. "Why?" "Seafarin' is dangerous," she returned. "Mis' Ball was terrible seasick comin' here," remarked her husband. "She didn't seem to have no sea legs, as you may say." "Ain't you tired of dwellin' on that?" asked Aunt Jane, sharply. "'Tain't no disgrace to be seasick, and I wa'n't the only one." Winfield came to the rescue with a question, and the troubled waters were soon calm again. After supper, Ruth said, "Auntie, may I take Mr. Winfield up to the attic and show him my grandmother's things that you've just given to me?" "Run along, child. Me and James will wash the dishes." "Poor James," said Winfield, in a low tone, as they ascended the stairs. "Do I have to wash dishes, Ruth?" "It wouldn't surprise me. You said you wanted to work for me, and I despise dishes." "Then we'll get an orphan to do 'em. I'm not fitted for it, and I don't think you are." "Say, isn't this great!" he exclaimed, as they entered the attic. "Trunks, cobwebs, and old furniture. Why have I never been here before?" "It wasn't proper," replied Ruth, primly, with a sidelong glance at him. "No, go away." They dragged the furniture out into the middle of the room and looked it over critically. There was all that she had described, and unsuspected treasure lay in concealment behind it. "There's almost enough to furnish a flat," she cried, in delight. He was opening the drawers of a cabinet, which stood far back under the eaves. "What's this, Ruth?" "Oh, it's old blue china, willow pattern. How rich we are!" "Is old blue willow pattern china considered beautiful?" "Of course it is, you goose. We'll have to have our dining room done in old blue now, with a shelf on the wall for these plates." "Why can't we have a red dining room?" "Because it would be a fright. You can have a red den if you'd like." "All right," he answered, "but it seems to me it would be simpler and save a good deal of expense if we just pitched the plates into the sad sea. I don't think much of 'em." "That's because you're not educated, dearest," returned Ruth, sweetly. "When you're married, you'll know a great deal more about China you see if you don't."